What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of NewOrleans.Basketball and NewOrleans.Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Raphael. What's popping with you, bro?
What up, bro? Everything's all good on this side, man. Getting ready. This is a really special time in our family and in the city. Thanksgiving is, depending on how you feel, it's a holiday, right? But the thing I love about living in New Orleans during Thanksgiving is that you get to go. Let me see what that gumbo tasted like. Let me see what that gumbo tasted like. Pop's gonna throw down the gumbo, so I'm gonna make sure I get a little bit extra for you in spirit, because I know it's kind of tough traversing with multiple children, like I like to call it with you. But man, everything's all good, man. Enjoying the sports equinox as always. Football, basketball is on. Got a lot of weird things going on in the NFL. A lot of weird things going on in college football. So I mean, this is the best time of the year, man. It just is, and as we get into what's going on with the Pelicans, some positive injury news. Who knew that was a thing that could happen with the Pelicans? I would just like to once again just say out loud how much self-awareness is my favorite trait in a human being. Because once again, if you have it, it is very noticeable. But if you don't have it, it is extra noticeable. So that's my word for today. That's my word for our listeners. Self-awareness, man. Have some of it, and if you don't, we know you don't. So yeah. With that being said, how's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed, man. To your point, it's not 2,000 degrees anymore, so I am okay with that. I am accepting that. I get down with my gumbo. I'm not quite where Dad at, but I'm close. I'm close with it. I'm close with it as well.
I've had some. I would agree.
I'm close with it. But yeah, this is my time of season. There was no New Orleans sports at all this weekend, so you couldn't be excited. You couldn't be disappointed. You couldn't be nothing. So you just got to watch sports in its entirety this weekend. And yeah, there was a lot of crazy things that went on, and there's a lot of crazy things that are yet to take place. And so before we get into those things in the NBA with the Pelicans and everything associated with it, make sure you guys are following us on X, on Twitter, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO_basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below. And if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, NewOrleans.Basketball. So the Pelicans had a week of 3 games. They did not win any of those 3 games, unfortunately. And again, I was in the house for the Mavericks game, and it's crazy that, I live in Dallas, and there's been so many people that have walked up to me and asked me questions about the Pelicans. And I went to the game with a couple of people as well, and they looked up at the starting lineup, and they were like, well, who's that? And who's that? And who's that? Damn, the Pelicans have a lot of injury. I'm like, yeah, I understand. But I mean, all in all, it was kind of, a tale's tale from the beginning of the game. Like, the game started with the turnover. I think the second possession was a turnover. And from there, it was just like, the Mavs have too much. The Pelicans didn't bring their hard hat, so to speak. And so they were shooting wide open shots, and they weren't getting stops on the other end, and they couldn't score on the other end. So it was just a nasty game. So the Pelicans lose that one by a lot of points, a lot to a little. Was there anything you would take out of that Mavs game? Or was that one you just flush and say you didn't have enough players to go against a team like that?
Yeah, it's bad when, the NBA instituted the NBA Cup. And in NBA Cup games, if you don't know, the score differential is important, right? Like, how much you win by and how much you lose by is important. And Jason Kidd was like, to hell with that. We need to sit the bench because we don't want to embarrass the players, right? I think that pretty much sums it up. In a game where you need as many points as possible, Jason Kidd was still like, let's not embarrass this team. It was an awful showing. It was terrible. And, it is like I said, in the previous episode, I thought the Mavs game was the game that they would have the highest chance of winning that week, because, it was, Dallas hadn't been playing well, and, Luka had been going through some things, and their defense hasn't been the greatest, but, I didn't account for Najee Marshall doing Najee Marshall things for the team. But yeah, I think that was just a game you chalk it up. And unfortunately, the Pelicans have gone through a lot of games this season where you're like, oh, you just chalk it up. But again, what can you do when you have the players that you have? And if you think that game was bad, talk about that next game.
Yeah. The Mavs game. The most fun thing about the Mavs game was watching Najee guard Bi, because if you don't watch the Pelicans heavily, you wouldn't get it that they're best friends, and watching them guard each other on the court was a lot to see. But yeah, you're right. The Cavaliers, they have lost the game now. They've only lost one, but they have lost the game. It just did not come to the Pelicans. To the Pelicans' credit, though, they were in it for half the game. Now, Ty Jerome decided he was Reggie Miller and in the middle of the second quarter, and by halftime, I think the Pelicans were down 14. And after halftime, it was a wrap. But in this one, your alumnus, Elfrid Payton, makes his first start in 3 years, literally gets signed, and then within 28 hours is starting for the team after not playing in the NBA for a year. But again, he almost has a triple-double. So what do you see from Elfrid, who probably still going to play at least for the next couple of weeks? What did you see from Elfrid in his first start, even though the Pelicans get blown out in this one?
Yeah, I would say that EP, for obvious reasons, was the star part, the best part of that game, because, having a guy that has been through as much as EP has been through, and to get back into the league and to be for his hometown team. I've always said, even when before the CJ McCollum trade, I was always on the fence. I was on the team of go get De'Aaron Fox, because people from New Orleans just kind of feel a different way about New Orleans. You could hear Elfrid talk about it before the game, about putting that New Orleans jersey on. And I thought, De'Aaron Fox could do the same thing, having that pride from New Orleans. But it was really good to see him get out there and do what he did well at UL, what he did well through the beginning of his NBA career with the Orlando Magic. Just be a guy that comes on the floor and you just trust him to make good decisions, to find people in good spaces. I said he went to the school of Rajon Rondo, and you saw it on the floor. It's just different to see, a guy get on the floor and have that point guard mentality first and foremost. I'll be looking for guys to get away, but he also showed off his little floater like that. Those are the things that I remember from his time up there in Laffey. So, it was good to see him. And again, you run into this situation where the Cavs are coming off of their first loss, an emotional loss against, who they're going to be neck and neck with all season in the Boston Celtics. But the Pels came out and, they fought hard. And again, unfortunately, it's the script for so many of the Pelicans games without their players. They fight hard. They play off adrenaline. They play good ball. But at the end of the game, this is where the stars, this is where the best players come in and close games. And, once again, the Willie Green looked to his left and his right. And at this time, he didn't even have B.I. or Trey Murphy at that point in time. Yeah, so nobody played that game. And so it just was a difficult, a difficult game for them to go in there and try to win. But they fought hard. But how many? It's a result-driven league. Nobody cares that you fought hard. They're looking at the wins and the losses, and the Pels drop another game in this tough Western Conference.
Right. The one positive you take away, again, it was crazy that you saw $100 million just on the bench, and that's what went around the league, right? Look at the Pelicans in the news for something bad yet again. But the one positive you take away was Antonio Reeves, man. 34 points as a rookie. Again, I understand you get blown out by 30. I understand there was no one else to play. But at the same time, 34 points is 34 points. And as a rookie,
somebody got to score.
Exactly. And right off the heels of releasing Jalen Noel, because you wanted to see what Antonio Reeves could bring, he shows out. And if he could be a potential microwave scorer, because you saw him score at all three levels, both at the rim, in the mid-range, and shoot from three. And if he can be that type of person that you hopefully one day have to tap into because everything has gone wrong and not under these circumstances, that's something you want to find amongst your team, amongst your young players. So what led to the most, interesting game of the week was another loss versus versus the Warriors, but it was the way that the Pelicans played. The Warriors have the best record in the West right now. They've been playing really good basketball to start the season with and without Steph. I'll say this much. Yes, the Pelicans lost at the end. Yes, Trey Murphy missed the shot to win. Yes, Brandon Ingram passed up the shot to win. Yes, they missed a bunch of free throws at the end and things like that. But I'll say this. I think this was an extremely well-coached game by Willie Green. I think from the non-technical that, or from the non-foul that Trey Murphy got, that which led to a Willie Green technical, to this way that they were scheming around Steph. Like, Steph still had 19, 7, and 7. Steph is still going to be Steph. But you were able to kind of slow him down, and it just so happened that Draymond Green decided that he was Ray Allen reincarnated, and it just so happened that the other players started hitting. Andrew Wiggins started hitting threes when they haven't been hitting threes at that clip in the most recent games and things like that. But you gave yourself a chance to win, even without the majority of your roster yet again. What did you see in that Golden State game where the Pelicans get eliminated from the NBA Cup and are unable to close one out at home?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I really did like that game. I liked some of the things I saw from Willie Green as far as schematics on defense, as well as offense. I think there was a good rhythm going on for on both sides of the ball. But the thing I was most impressed with, and again, this is deep cut Pelican stuff, but Brandon Ingram, this kind of media shift on Brandon Ingram and the type of player that he is, it kind of started with Steve Kerr and the FIBA run, last year, but before the Olympics and stuff. And, even last season, Brandon Ingram was hurt when they played the Warriors, and it was like, oh, is he ducking Steve Kerr? And like, this is the type of person that you would want to go out there and be like, you know what, you benched me and misused me, and kind of have this narrative around me going into that season. This is an opportunity for you to come out and ball and hoop, and he didn't have that opportunity last season. But this season, this game, he came out, and with Steph playing, we've always talked about Steph not playing in New Orleans, and when last time he did come to New Orleans, he completely torched the Pelicans. BI was out there going toe to toe with Steph and looking Draymond in the eyes and looking Steve Kerr in the eyes. And I mean, look, this is the when we heard Zion talk about out for revenge, we thought it was going to be him, but BI has played really well this season, and I liked his competitiveness going into to that Warriors game and playing that Warriors game. I wish he had taken that shot at the end of the game. He said it himself. But I don't think it was the wrong basketball play. I think it was the right play. Trey had been rolling and that just hit a three, 1 or 2 possessions before that. So I think it was the right basketball play. It's a lot of things that you saw with LeBron dealing with it when he was coming up. Did you make the right basketball play versus you're the best player on the team, take the shot? And I think that's kind of what you saw with BI in that specific situation. But all in all, I really liked his competitiveness. I like Trey Murphy's competitiveness. I like Jordan Hawkins coming in. And obviously, he didn't have the greatest shooting, night, but you felt that energy. You felt that his ability to come in and at least just be a 5-alarm fire and be another offensive weapon on the court. And I think as he gets back into his rhythm, some of what we saw earlier in the season, I think he'll be fine. And as you get more reinforcements in, I think this is going to be a better equipped team to compete as you get guys back because of the games that you've gone through. Can you get back in the fold? That's yet to be seen. But I think this will be a more competitive team as you get more guys back because of the experiences that the guys, including Brandon Ingram and Trey Murphy and Jordan Hawkins, have gone through so far.
Yeah, I look at this game, and there's a couple things that stand out. The Pelicans actually shot more threes than the Warriors, which is a crazy thing to be saying about the Pelicans and the Warriors. Now, they made the same amount, which is not great. But to your point, like, Hawk alludes to it a lot of times when he's been asked questions. He was like, man, I haven't gotten a chance to play with Trey. And it's crazy that they mention each other, that they're both shooters and they like to play off each other's gravitational pull. To your point, Hawk was 2 of 9, right? Like, he didn't necessarily shoot the ball well, but his presence and his ability to take up space on the court was noticeable, right? And so not only that, like, again, we just talked about Elfrid Payton. I don't know if it was a combination of Elfrid starting with shooters or also the Golden State Warriors also playing with pace, but the Pelicans played with more pace. And so every time you notice, CJ will walk the ball up and Brandon Boston will walk the ball up and Brandon Ingram will walk the ball. Every time you saw Elfrid with the ball, he was pushing the ball up the court. Like, hey, we're not going to get in our set with 10 seconds left on the shot clock. Like, he was making the team go faster and everything just felt a little bit smoother. So it's probably a combination of two that you were forced to play up pace because that's how Golden State played. But I really liked how the Pelicans played on that end. To your point, and like we talked about on every single podcast, when the Pelicans defend, they always give themselves a chance to win. Yeah, Steph had 19 points, but it was really their defensive mentality and edge. Like, you saw JRE diving on the floor and setting the tone from that standpoint. You saw Brandon Ingram getting blocks at the rim. Like, that's what you need. Like, when you're undermanned and when you don't have your guys and your guns, you got to win the ugly minutes. You got to win the scrappy minutes. You got to be the hungrier team. And, like, when the Mavs game and the Cleveland game, like, you could tell when guys would just walk up and shoot threes whenever they want. Like, that's how you don't have enough to fight back with that power. So you have to cut that off immediately. And I saw that in this game. And so this gives me a little more sense that, hey, if you can string some of this together, and it's easy to look at the past 2.5 weeks. Look at the games when the Pelicans got blown out with I'm not even going to call it squadron roster, but a band of misfits. And then look at the games that were close. It just so happens to be the ones where you applied the pressure and that you were making it difficult for the other team that gave yourself a chance to win. Again, you get out rebounded in this one, but Yves Missi takes the night off. He's been dealing with the shoulder thing. He's played the second most minutes on the roster so far this year. And so you probably needed a night off, especially when you were going to go against Draymond and stuff like that. He probably needed a night off. But what did you see from Trae? I think this was the first game where it felt like Trae kind of had his legs underneath him because he was shooting the ball with confidence, wasn't really hesitating. And you can see the comfort level off the dribble.
Yeah, that's my litmus test for Trae, right? Is he being aggressive with the thing that makes him great, right? Which is his shot. Because again, you see the work that he's putting in by putting the ball on the ground, and again, that's great because you want him to be able to have a lot of versatile ways to attack offenses, especially when they're closing out on him. Or if he's going to be in the pick and roll and kind of get people off kilter a little bit because he's in pick and roll. I think he had a really high like pick and roll success rate last season, which is wild to think about. But like that's something that he's been working on, and you could tell. However, again, what makes Trae Murphy great is the fact that he's that damn tall and can let it go from wherever. And you saw him get into a couple of different situations where he had to put the shot up, and I mean it was water, it was going in, and that's what makes Trae special to me, right? That's what makes him such an important part of this team because again, Jordan Hawkins is more of a movement shooter, and he's a guy that could get hot going in different places. Trae Murphy is just a flat out like shooting machine where if that ball hits him and it goes up, you should feel comfortable that shot has a more than, average chance of going in. And I think that is going to be the way that he makes his, he already got his money, but shows his value with the money on the court when these guys get back in. You hear all these bodies coming back soon and, this person has been upgraded and that person has been upgraded. I think Trae Murphy's ability to have some times where he can put the ball on the ground and attack aggressively is going to play well. But again, when these guys get back and you have, all of these different weapons shooting and turning the corner and driving, you want to have a guy that is, that lethal from the 3-point line, be confident and be comfortable in his shot. And I think, like you said, that Warriors game, that you started to see it a little bit come out like, okay, he's getting his legs underneath him. The game looks like it's slowing down for him as he gets back from his injury. And I think also he's starting to understand that he doesn't have to save the Pelicans every single possession. And I think that's what That's what he was dealing with when he first came back. I mean, there was a lot of pressure on Trey to come in. Please, Trey, come in and save. Please come. He came back and he tried to save the Pelicans on every possession. But I think now it's slowing down and he's getting back to more of the Trey Murphy that that made him get this big contract and be the enigma that I call him.
Right. You bring up a really good point because, so much has been made about the Pelicans offense with, all of these backups. And for years, probably the last 2 or 3 years, we've been screaming the Pelicans need to mismatch hunt. Very similar to how the Celtics do, where they and the Mavs do. Anyone that has explosive wings that are looking for your worst defender. And you always felt like the Pelicans never did that. Well, it seems like that was the strategy going into this season, where we're going to do more of that because we have so many weapons to throw at you. It just so happens that all of those weapons were thrown out the window with Call of Duty's update, and you didn't have any of them. And so now when you're mismatch hunting, to your point, it's not Trey Murphy on the 5th worst defender. It's Trey Murphy on the best defender, and it's not Brandon Ingram on the 2nd worst defender. And so you don't get to see what your offense should look like. And to your point, as guys start to come back and Trey's not being guarded by the best defender on the other team, that's going to open up so much for him, for Hawk, and for everybody else that it follows. Now, someone who's not coming back relatively soon or in the next week or so is Zion Williamson. So yet again, Zion doesn't play this week, but yet again, his name is in the news. So this time, again, not for anything good. So CAA announced that they are dropping Zion Williamson due to injury concerns. This is like right off the year where Jasper Bibbs, the personal trainer that has worked with a lot of professional athletes and NBA players, also stopped working with Zion a year before because of unbeknownst reasons. How big of an alarm is this? Again, there's been some stuff that came out from Shams that, has since been rebutted about him not being available or him getting injections and things like that. And he even came out this week and said he's looking for Jan. I probably wouldn't anticipate seeing Jose or Zion until January anyway, with hamstrings and with everything going on. That would have been my guess before any of this dropped. That would have been, oh yeah, we'll see him in 2025 when the ball drops. That would have been my guess anyways. But where's your alarm system now that things are starting to add up where it's this can't be good?
Yeah, it's not great. Listen, the mutual separation, whatever you want to call it, whatever is labeled as. The truth is that if a client, if a company, if an agency, if an agent felt like this person is a great investment, is going to make us money, they would not part ways, with the client. So it's not a great look, no matter how way people explain it. It's a mutual parting, or CAA dropped them, or Zion, whatever. This is kind of what I've been worried about, when we talked about this earlier in the season, is that when you think about the greats, right? Again, you're thinking about LeBron and Steph and KD, those guys, Steph missed time earlier in his career because of the ankles, but he got that kind of figured out and went on to achieve greatness, right? LeBron has, for the most part, until he got later in his years, was available. Kevin Durant in his prime and before his prime and right outside of his prime. Well, he still is, but whatever. But the earlier years, he was available. And then you look at guys who just do not, they just can't, right? You're looking at Joel Embiid, and you're looking at Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and you see guys who just, you have to build, bake into the season that these guys are going to miss time, right? And you look at the Celtics players, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, those guys do not miss games. Jokic does not miss games. Obviously Giannis has gone through his injury stuff, but besides some of those freak injuries, Giannis has been available. And you just get to worrying, is this something that Zion, which part of that is Zion going to be on? And for these first 6 years, it's always been, hey, is this guy, going to be available? And last year he played 70 games, and he was great. And obviously you didn't have any all-star buzz or all-NBA buzz or whatever the case was, but you saw Zion be great, right? And you saw him get progressively better throughout the season, and then going into the end of that season, again, he was walking the Lakers down into the hamstring pull. And it's like, was that the pinnacle of Zion playing games? And it's a fair question to ask. And I think it's a question that fans are asking, fans of the Pelicans are asking. It's a question that fans of the NBA are asking. It's a question that NBA media has been answering over and over and over, saying out loud, hey, this guy is not available. He's untrustworthy and things like that. And then it's obviously a question that CAA asked themselves. And whatever the reason that they came across, they decided that answer was no. And so, again, we are in a situation where you don't know when Zion is going to be back. And, you heard him talk about it, and he seemed really, really, down. Like, it looked like a person who was like, not this again, right? They asked him about, does it have any reprieve for you that is not as serious as the last one? And he's like, yeah, that's fine and all, but like, I'm still not playing. And so it's a tough situation, because I've always said, like, when you think about Zion, there's only like there's only two paths you can go, right? You can trade him or not trade him, right? But that is where everybody is going. And right now, it's not prudent on, I've seen people talk about get him off the team, let him go. It's not prudent to trade an asset like that at his absolute lowest. And I think, that's not something that anyone is, especially when you have 5 years of him remaining with no way out. And at the same time, like, if you do trade him, and again, and I can hear the comments already, I can hear it. If he gets 1 year and is healthy, and it's what we've seen when he is healthy, then I mean, how, we've already seen people yell at the Pelicans, say, how dare you let Dyson Daniels walk after he had like a couple of like decent games.
That's
like,
no,
no, he has. But I'm saying, after like a couple of decent games, everybody's like, why would you let Dyson leave? But when Dyson was on the team, it was like, well, that guy can't shoot, he can't do this, so don't play him. I can only imagine what the media, what the fan base would say about David Griffin if they traded Zion away and he ended up playing 70 games for the Knicks. It was all NBA. They would call for his head and call for everything. So it's a tough situation for everybody involved. I don't have to make the decisions. I'm glad I don't have to make the decisions, but it is very concerning that here we are in year 6 of Zion, and having to answer these same questions again over and over again. And I think CAA, who was representing him, asked themselves the same question and decided, we've always talked about it. Zion is special because usually the NBA is like, if you're not good in these first couple of 2-3 years, we don't care about you. We on to the next. We on to the next, right? We are moving on to the next. But it does not seem that way for Zion. But again, year 6, asking these same questions, and CAA has answered the questions for themselves. So it's a tough situation, man. I hate that Zion has to go through it. I hate that the Pelicans have to go through it. But it is what it is, and you just gotta hold on and see what happens when he comes back, and see if he can stay healthy and close out the season the same way he was last season.
Here's where I'm at with it. Should the Zion trade, or should the Pelicans trade Zion right now? I'm a business person. The answer is no. You never trade an asset when everything you just outlined, when its value's at this low. The same reason why you don't trade Brandon Ingram for pennies when the asset's at its lowest value. You just don't do that. And right now, that's where Zion's value is right now. So that just doesn't make any sense to me. Here's where I'm at on the other end. Like, again, it's easy, and we talked about this before, it's easy to lump this injury in with like every other injury that he's had and said that he's out of shape, he didn't work well out, and yada, yada, yada. Well, this season is a little bit different because, like, from all accounts, he entered the season the best shape possible. Every single person, like even the people who hate Zion, are like, yeah, we're hearing good things, that he's built the right habits. And to your point, like, he is one of one in a way where even if you do everything right, it still might not be enough because of how he plays. And when he was asked the question, hey, you play with so much force, you can just see him shaking his head. And he's like, I've heard this over and over and over. What do you want me to do type thing? It's crazy that on the same week that this comes out, our friends over at NewOrleans.Football, Nick drops an article and a video detailing how Alvin Kamara goes over the top to prepare for his body, to prevent injuries and to recover injury, how he spends a ton of money on his body, a ton of time on his body to make sure, even if something could happen, that it won't not happen. I think that's where, again, you're hoping Zion gets to. Like, you've always heard that LeBron spends millions on his body to, again, obviously do what he's done at age 40, a damn near, and still be able to be one of the best players in the NBA. He spends because he's one of one. Zion has to get to this point. I think that he's taking the right steps. He's taking the right habits. He's recovering better, things like that. But I think until he's literally doing everything possible to say, I have the only body like Zion ever to be had. So let me get all these specialists around me to consistently see what I could be doing better, whether I'm injured or not. I think that will be when he gets that final notch and he's able to say, now I can get going. Now I can play consistently and things along those lines.
Just to kind of add on, the thing I hate, because you brought it up, the thing I hate is when people, like, I saw the tweet that people like compared Zion to LeBron, right? And they're like, oh, this is, the video of him coming out and the tattoo thing. And again, that's self-awareness from the tattoo artist, or Zion, whoever posted, just self-awareness, bro. You're hurt. He's hurt. He's not don't post a video from the preseason and showing that just not great. Not a great timing. Timing is everything. But I saw the video and it showed Zion's body versus LeBron at 39 and Zion at 25, whatever. LeBron is one of one. Like, there is no one who has been like him. There will be no one ever again like him. That you should never compare him to that. And I know that, and I know that it's more about it's more about how Zion plays and what he does on the court. Because there's a 3-time MVP in the league right now who don't really look like LeBron when he takes his shirt off. I'm just throwing that out there. But he's available all the time. Talk about Nikola Jokic. He's available all the time, and he plays a less dangerous game than Zion, right? And so that is the thing that it's like you can't compare Zion. You can't compare anybody to LeBron. You can't compare Zion to LeBron. Kevin Durant does not look like LeBron when he takes his shirt off. They just don't. People have different body types, and it is fine. Can Zion, I think part of what's going on with Zion is that he's paying the price for not taking it seriously earlier in his career, right? Had he been doing some of the things that he did this offseason, his rookie year, his sophomore year, his third year, any of those years, his body would be more, I think there would be more flexibility. They'd be more well-maintenance. There'd be a better maintenance version of Zion. So is he at fault? Absolutely. I am not espousing any kind of blame from him because there are things that he says it himself that he could have done. The thing that he could have done better. The thing I just don't understand is when people, compare him to LeBron. Like LeBron is 6'9". Like it's just, they're not the same. They're never going to look the same. I don't think you're like Zion's high school and Duke body. Like that was a while ago before a lot of injuries. And, I think that you just have to this, again, going back to what I initially said, this is just something like you're going to have to go into every season saying like, this is something, but like you said, until he gets towards a space where he can take, be more serious, take it even more serious and understand that you went hard this past offseason. This has to be something that is routine all throughout your life, right? This isn't something you could turn off at the end of the season and then pick it up 3 months later and think you could just play your way back in. Like you have to maintain if you want to be great. And again, the on-court production speaks for itself. It's not like I told you this over a PlayStation party. It's not like we talking about Eddie Curry and Anthony Bennett and guys like that. Like this dude puts up 25, 25, 30 points a game when he plays. Like it's not like we're talking about somebody garbage. So, the Pelicans just have to, Zion just has to decide what is he going to be? When is he going to take this the serious way or not? But again, it's a difficult situation altogether.
Well, here's how I look at it. And again, I said this since the Dejounte Murray trade. This is why you bring in another all-star in the first place. So you're not going to have Zion. You're not going to have Jose probably till 2025. But if I look at the upcoming stretch, and apparently CJ McCollum is on slate to play for the Pacers. Dejounte Murray was upgraded to doubtful, which generally means you're going to play the game after that.
CJ was doubtful for Golden State.
Right. So that's a great sign that you may be getting those two back. Hopefully you hear something on Herb shortly behind. And so you and I have talked about this off the pod. If you remove the names and you just say on the bench, you currently have a superstar who averages 25 plus. You have a first-team all-defensive player. You have another all-star. And then you have another player who averages 20 points over 10 years in the league. All unavailable to play. Tell me another team in the league that still will be able to put out another all-star on the court, an upper-rounding player like a Trey Murphy on the court as well, and somebody's going to be in the top 5, I think, in Rookie of the Year conversation in Ease Meese. There's not another team that can do both. And so when you bring some of those guys back, mine Jose and mine Zion, I still think you have a pretty damn good roster. Like, I think once those guys get back, while you don't have the supernova in Zion, all those other pieces I think will work well together and will play well together and will be able to help each other out both on the offensive and the defensive end. And so when I look at this slate of games, you've got at Indiana tomorrow. On Wednesday, you got at home versus Toronto, which you got to have that game. If CJ is playing and Hawk is playing and Trey you got to beat Toronto at home. Like, you just have to have that one. And then you go to Memphis. It looks like Ja Morant, of course, is coming back in time to play the Pelicans. But I look at this slate of games, and I'm like, this is where you start to turn things around. As people get back and you get an opportunity to win some games that are winnable, this is where it's at. So let's look at these games. Talk to me about what you expect from CJ's return. Talk to me about what you expect from Dejounte return. And let's look at these 3 games and think, what do you think the record could be?
Yeah, well, the Pacers just played tonight. They won. I forgot who they played, but they won tonight. So you'll be playing on a back-to-back. So you'll be getting them on a back-to-back, which again is an advantage in of itself. If you bring in if CJ is back, I think you have a really good shot to beat the Pacers. They are not a defensive team, so they're more of a finesse team, and so you can kind of get some offensive things going. If CJ comes back and is back to where he was, even in that first game of the season where he was shooting really well, I think you can do some things against Indiana. The thing about Indiana though is that they also run, and so when you bring in CJ, who hasn't played a lot, this season, his condition is going to come into play. Is he going to be back to and back into basketball shape? And then the chemistry, right, is bringing CJ back for this Pacers game if he indeed does play. You've built kind of of something. You kind of saw some things going on with Brandon Ingram and Brandon Boston and Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Now you're bringing in a guy who's not only going to probably start, but also take a lot of shots. And so, a lot of those shots are not going to be available for those guys. So are they going to be able to be efficient and knock down the shots that they are given? If you're not, Brandon Boston might not get 15, 20 shots, this game. And so are you going to be available to be efficient in the times that you can score? So I think this Pacers game, you get a shot in the arm with CJ coming back. Obviously Jordan Hawkins has had some time to kind of, get himself together, his back together. Hopefully Eves can get out there and play. But it's going to be very interesting to see, how the Pelicans approach that game with CJ's return. Are they going to do the minutes restriction? Are they going to start him or whatever the case is? Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I know. But
you can guarantee there will be a minutes restriction.
Right. So, and how does that play out in the rotations, especially with the chemistry things I was speaking about. So, I think you should be able to get this Pacers game. You should be able to get it. especially if everybody plays and Brandon Ingram, comes out and has it on his mind.
Right. I look at that one, and again, I look at the Toronto game. That has to be a win because it's not a back-to-back. It's a home game. I think that's the game you get Dejounte Murray in. And again, look, I've said this from the beginning. And I know we had a podcast and we talked about who would you want back. This is back when you had Zion and BI. But who would you want back between Trey and Dejounte if you could only pick one? I've seen enough evidence to know that the answer is Dejounte because I think, again, when the Pelicans defend and their perimeter defense is at an all-time high and it's forcing everyone else to defend, they give themselves a chance. And if Herb's not back yet, DeJounte is the second best on-ball defender on the team. And so if you can bring that on the defensive end, that helps you, but also the other way around. This team has been missing a point guard. We talk about Elfrid Payton being like a true floor setter, a general. If you really think about it, this team hasn't had a real point guard in maybe like 4, 5, 6 years because CJ is not a real point guard either. And then Jose is kind of a combo guard. He's just shorter. And so like a true table setter, you're looking at Elfrid Payton was like, oh, this one must be what Brandon Ingram was looking for when he was like, I just want to catch a shoot. Now you get someone who can score consistently for themselves, but also can make it ease Messi better, which again, he's been growing despite not being able to get easy buckets because no one can deliver easy buckets for him. You get him better. You get BI better because the spacing better, and you can get him shots where he doesn't have to dribble at all. You get Trey better because he's already a catch-and-shoot player. So, like, I think DeJounte just makes so many more people better on top of what he brings to the game already. And so I think with him back and CJ back and Hawk back and Trey back, you have more than enough to win some of these games on your schedule moving forward. So, with that game and then the Friday game versus Memphis, that's going to be a big one for me because, again, the Grizzlies always play the Pelicans well. The Ja came back for 9 games last season, and 2 of them were versus the Pelicans, and 2 of them he hit game-winning shots on. So he just always plays well for the Pelicans. I'm interested to see what the Pelicans look like and match up in that particular matchup on Friday. What are some of the keys you look for in that one, which I think is the toughest game of the league?
Yeah, like you were saying, I think it's no coincidence that the Pelicans looked a lot better and a lot more functionable when Elfrid came in the game, right? I came on the team. Elfrid's obviously not a superstar or gonna push you over to a championship contender, but it's a mindset having a guy in there you trust with the ball and is always looking for people, to get them into spaces. And DeJounte is very similar to that. And I think he's another proactive player. I think Brandon Ingram is out there as a proactive player. And really, Trey Murphy is trying to be a proactive player, but most of the guys out there, other than I would say Brandon Boston, are reactive players. They have to play off of Brandon Ingram. They have to get set up by Brandon Ingram because he's the only guy out there. Or it could be Brandon Boston, but we saw how those alley-oops go, and they're not great. So, DeJounte is another proactive player at the point guard position, a guy who doesn't need Brandon Ingram to set him up, who can go get his own bucket, but he's also aggressive at trying to find other people. And we saw that with the lob after lob after lob to Ease Messi in that first game of the season. And so what I think bringing DeJounte and also kind of bringing CJ back does as well is it relieves some of the pressure on Brandon Ingram as well. I mean, he has really been the only ball handler until Elfrid got there that the Pelicans have been deploying. They were trying to start this Brandon Boston, Javonte Green, Brandon Ingram kind of 1, 2, and 3, and that just did not go well. And Brandon Ingram just had to bring the ball up every play, pass it in, run around screens, fight through people, get the ball back. He's if you got to make the play, like you're the only guy out there. And so bringing CJ and bringing DeJounte back will keep him from having to do so much on the offensive end and keep him fresher for close games. I think, when you get tired, the first thing that you start to falter at is your decision making. I think that's the first thing that goes when you get exhausted and get tired. And I think you kind of saw some of that with Brandon Ingram in these last couple of games, even though he's played well. I think there's been times where he could be more aggressive, but he's not because he's had to do so much and handle the ball so much. Bringing CJ back, bringing DeJounte back, I think will help Brandon Ingram a lot in that way. And again, like you said, the Grizzlies are always going to be a tough game, right? The Raptors game is you should be able to take care of the game, especially if you get Dejounte, CJ, Trey, Herb, BI. If those guys are available, you should win that Raptors game. But that Grizzlies game, like you said, is going to be super important for me as well. Obviously, I think Zach Edey won't play, but Eves and Jaren Jackson Jr. should be a really good matchup there as well. Be a good test for Eves as a guy who's with Jaren Jackson, who's extremely mobile, will shoot from the three-point line. But I think he can have some opportunities to bang with Jaren Jackson, who's not a great rebounder, who gets in foul trouble a lot. So I'll be interested to see if Dejounte is indeed playing, can they get some of Eves and some of those pick and roll actions on Jaren Jackson and get Jaren Jackson in foul trouble. But again, the most important thing will be if Dejounte is back to guard, if Ja Morant is back, because Ja is a Pelicans killer. He has scored a lot of points against the Pelicans over the years. I think having Dejounte back, and again, this was a hand injury, so his legs should be fine. He should be in basketball shape. Maybe the shot is a little rusty, but he should be able to run up and down and play defense on him. And I want to have him out there, as that first line of defense against Ja, especially without Herb being there. So I'm looking forward to that Grizzlies game. I think that's going to be the important game this week as well. But I'd like to see it get started off well with the game tomorrow against the Pacers. I think if you come out and you really can show some things, CJ show some things, BI get into a rhythm. I think if you can start the week off with a win, you can set the tone for the next couple of games. So I think this Pacers game is important, but I think that Grizzlies game, like you said, is the most important game of the week.
Right. So you finish out November this week with those 3 games, and then December you got 7 home games, and you got a little NBA Cup in the middle, which the Pelicans will not be taking a part.
No, they will not.
And you got 4 away games versus the Knicks, Hawks, Spurs, and Rockets. So if there was a time to turn it around, it's right now, and it starts with this week. Again, this is a holiday week, Thanksgiving. We want to say that we're extremely grateful for everybody who follows us and rocks with us. Again, we got exciting things to come, so just stay tuned. We sound like that. We sound like the Pelicans too, but I promise you it's right around the corner on the end. With that being said, this is the week for the real Pelicans players to return. Hopefully this is the week for W's to return as well. What you got left for the people, Garrick?
As always, you never know what people are going through. So during this Thanksgiving week, please give someone a smile. Yes, it will be very, very interesting to see actual NBA players that were in training camp and on actual NBA contracts 2 weeks ago, last week, whatever the case is. So again, it's been a tumultuous start to this season, but guys are starting to return. And so hopefully this will be the week that you at least have the starting backcourt back, as well as Jordan Hawkins, as well as Trey Murphy, and everybody who stays and remains healthy, as well as Eves Misi. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Or if you celebrating whatever, happy Indigenous Day to everyone who celebrates that as well. All of your holidays, happy those to everyone. As always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_Basketball, no E. That's on Twitter, X, Instagram, wherever you get your social medias. Most importantly, subscribe to NewOrleans.Basketball, and we'll see you guys in the next one.